whatever you want to call this, live streaming TV, just having fun with friends evening. Hello, everyone, and welcome,
Hello.
my friends, to the spoiler room. Appreciate you venturing down the stairs, pulling up a chair, and grabbing your favorite drink. Yes, I got my brandy old fashioned with me today. And we are closing out our solid Alibi month with a more modern film. I know, big surprise. I warned you that this year was going to have a lot of older films, but we got a newer older film. It's from 2006, and its original title is The Alibi, but it also goes by Lies and Alibis. And tonight with me is the guy who keeps coming back for more, is none other than the one and only legendary Mr. Ian Simmons. Hello, Ian. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here. It's gonna be an interesting one to talk about, considering it was made this century.
Right? I know most of them. And yeah, just deal with it, folks. No, just kidding. I'm choosing old films. I wanted to cover a lot. I figured, with the pre-code theme, it was a good opportunity to look at older films. But I do work a couple newer films each month in, so above past 2000. So we'll be looking at some other ones as well. We've got a very interesting one just based off the trailer next month in which I can't wait. That looks like it could either be a lot of fun or horrible. I don't know, but it should be interesting. But tonight we are talking Lies and Alibis. It stars. We've got. I probably murder the name again. Well, we've got Rebecca. Was it Rebecca Romijn? I always pronounce. How do you
Rebecca
pronounce
Romaine Stamos.
Romaine? Well, no, it's not Stamos right now. It's just Rebecca
Well, not
Romaine.
anymore. Yeah, I think she was with Jerry O'Connell at this point. But yeah,
Rebecca Romaine and
Mystique. Just call her Mystique.
Mystique and Steve Coogan. And Mr. Ian Simmons, if you wouldn't mind, give the synopsis of Lies and Alibis.
Steve Coogan plays a guy named Ray Elliott.
Yep.
And he runs a company that specializes in helping people become better cheaters, philanderers. Because he says that, most relationships break up because people get caught cheating. So what if there's a business where fabulously wealthy people could pay someone to ensure that they never get caught? And he hires Rebecca Romaine's. I'm going to have to stop appending that last name to it. Rebecca Romaine's character as his new assistant slash master co-conspirator, co-creator of marital infidelity facilitation. But then there's a murder, and all of a sudden all these weird pseudo underworld figures are involved. Everything culminates in a hotel, and this movie is from 2006. So it's about 12 years after, but still riding the tail end of that Pulp Fiction,
Yes,
Get Shorty, Usual Suspects vibe. Like the year 94 to 95 was very influential in the movies that shaped the next 5, 10, 15 years. And this is like right at the tail end of it. Not only because of the kind of thematic elements and the delivery of the crime plus comedy plus danger and twisty, interwoven plots and playing with time, but also because it's a who's who of character actors and pseudo celebrities from that time. There's only, I think, 3 actors in this movie I didn't recognize. Everybody else, oh my God, James Marsden?
Oh my God, Terry Crews? What?
Yeah, this was in 06. He was only three or 4 years after Idiocracy, so he was still oh my God, who's that guy? Yeah. Man.
Yeah, it surprised me. I had never seen it. This was one of those to where when the video shelf was around, it passed it quite a bit. The cover always caught me because it has Rebecca Romaine on it and Coogan on it, and their faces up close. So it was always that one that was facing out on the video shelf. So I always passed it. I'm like, well, I do like Rebecca and her performances a lot of times. So I'm like, yeah, but I never rented it. So that's kind of why I was happy when I decided, hey, let's look at films with Alibi in the title, which there aren't many. I came across this one and I'm like, yeah, this would be an interesting one. I didn't even watch the trailer for it or anything. And the summary doesn't tell you exactly how chaotic this goes, but this is definitely one of those ensemble type, multi-threaded, multi-character stories that we've seen from like Cohen's, we've seen from well, like you said, writing the coattails of like Pulp Fiction and Unusual Suspects, and that, more recent examples would be like, was it a One Night in El Rey, I think it was, or whatever, the hotel one is similar to that, to where you get, one story and then you get all these kind of little sub stories involved, and it culminates into this kind of like Ocean's 11 type of approach to a solution. And
Yeah, yeah. Ocean's 11. That's another good one.
mm,
As far as a reference point. By the way, I told you I was going to do this right before we got on the air, and it finally
yeah.
came to me. Billie Eilish.
Oh, okay. All right.
Folks out there,
There
if you
you
want to
go.
know what the context for that is, subscribe to Mark's Patreon and find out.
For only $1, you can get access to that and 300 of some odd other episodes. Pardon my shill is showing. So,
I
but
love
back
that.
lies and alibis. What was how'd you feel initially with this film? Were you bored with it? Was it just, were you interested? How'd you feel about it?
I was never bored. I went through like the full range of emotions. I definitely had a get off my lawn moment for the first like 15 minutes of this, because it's a very
Mm.
snappy kind of like Ocean's 11 is a good comparison setup of Steve Coogan's Elliot character narrating what he does. There's always like little infographics about infidelities and stuff popping up, and he's arranging for the affair of uh, James Brolin's character,
James.
not Josh. Yeah, James Brolin. And I was morally repulsed by what I was watching. I'm like, this is what we're doing, right? We're gonna set up this whole thing about an infidelity club or whatever. And I don't. I'm not on board with this. But then when we got into the kind of the criminal element, like Henry Rollins shows up as a henchman for a Mormon crime boss, and he wears the LDS kind of like white press shirt and straight skinny black tie. I'm like, okay, I'm getting more on board. And then James Marsden shows up, as I mentioned, playing the dorky, idiot son of this powerful man, of James Brolin's character. I like this is good. I like this. Rebecca Romaine was very funny and charming and kind of sexy. I like her interplay with Steve Coogan.
Yeah.
It was sexy. It wasn't
Mhm.
like just like, oh, they're gonna bone. It was like that old fashioned kind of like chemistry between two like awkward, like lost people. But then when I realized and I saw the screenplay all coming together, and it's going to be all of the bad guys end up at a hotel, just like the end of True Romance, which was like Pulp Fiction, written by Quentin Tarantino. I'm like, okay, this is where I just shut off for 25 to 30 minutes. I'll come back at the end. Fortunately, it didn't end up like a Tarantino bloodbath. It was a lot smarter
No.
than that, but it
Mhm.
was still that kind of like, I like, oh yeah, I forgot what kind of movie I was watching, and then it ends on a kind of a sweet note. So
Mhm.
I didn't hate it. It's just a very odd film, and unlike you, I had never heard of this before. I
Really?
didn't no
Eh.
context for it all. Did it come out in theaters or was it just a straight to
I
video thing?
think this was a straight to video thing. I don't think it did hit the theaters. I can check quick here. But it was from the writer of the Bones TV show, as
Oh, Holly.
well as Fargo TV show. Uh, he hadn't written too much, but because he's been so busy with TV shows. But apparently he's lined up to be the writer for, possibly for a Star Trek TV movie, and one episode of Alien, which
Yeah, that's wasn't isn't he is he just writing Alien or is he I had heard he was like like he's majorly attached to
He's
that Hulu
executive
series.
producer too.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So he's executive, but yeah, he did. He did 43 episodes of Bones and like 51 episodes of the Fargo TV show, which a lot of people liked. So, the writing of this wasn't bad. This was his first piece that he did, I think, like movie.
Hmm.
Um, but you could feel the influences of, like you said, those 90s shows, 90s movies on its sleeve. I liked the chemistry between, I liked the back and forth between Steve Coogan and Rebecca Romaine quite a bit. And I think I get what you're saying with her character too. Her character was sexy. She knew she was sexy. She used that to her advantage at some points. But she was on equal ground with the Ray Elliott character, with Steve Coogan's character. It wasn't like he was the dominant personality. She actually, in some respects, was the stronger personality than he was at times. But they felt more equal, which is something you don't always see in the dynamic between, your male and female lead in a film like this, I think.
Well, it was also the way that she was presented. I mean, she was, very much an it girl, especially,
Right.
as Mystique in the X-Men movies, the same as Jennifer Lawrence was later when she was Mystique, fully naked except for these like blue body paint and strategically placed scales. But
Right.
in this film, she's very attractive.
Mhm.
But the wardrobe is classy,
Mhm.
and it gives you the idea of she's not parading around in her panties, or like there's no shots
No.
of her like coming slowly out of a pool or something like that. She's just allowed to be, a sexy, attractive woman, and I appreciate that. I think Keith, I keep saying Keith Coogan. That's the guy from Adventures in Babysitting. Steve Coogan.
Yes.
I think he's not as strong a personality when he's around her. I think
Mhm.
he's used to being kind of like the closed off boss man, and he's very good at giving orders and dealing with situations. But I like the vulnerability that he shows when he's around her. I thought it was interesting because initially she kind of teases him about being gay, because there's this Jack character that's constantly referenced as being his old like boss and
Boss,
possible
yep.
like business partner in crime. Then I think she asked, like, was he a jilted lover or something, like, did you
Mhm.
guys have a spat? So I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I wonder if I wonder if that's the angle, and they're going to come up against it because maybe she's interested and he's definitely not. Um, they didn't go that route, which is fine.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's an oddly sweet movie,
It is.
even though it gets, pretty rough and tumble during some of it. I mean, John
Yeah.
Leguizamo shows up in this movie, playing the driver of, I think it was James Brolin's character, and he roughs up Steve Coogan pretty well in the middle there.
Yeah, he does. It takes it's probably part of, outside of the death of the, young lady, which is actually happens off screen, which I kind of appreciated how
Hmm.
how we see the after, we don't see the full, murder, so it doesn't get that heavy or dark, but it's kind of handled afterwards, so you don't get that. But it does get a little dark when her boyfriend shows up and thinks Ray Elliott is the guy who was with her, because part of his bait and switch, he normally doesn't do field work, but he was doing it for the Brolin character as a favor. And so his alibi angle was he would pose as the son, and the son would pose as him, going to this B&B in the middle of nowhere. And of course, now, since she died, they think Ray Elliott is a suspect, and that's how you get into that kind of quagmire of, of him trying to dodge the cops and all of that. But it doesn't get too heavy until her boyfriend shows up, and he gets roughed up pretty good. There's a little bit of scariness. If there wasn't quite as much comedic banter between the three guys, I think it would have been a little more scary, but at least
Yeah,
they keep that part light. But he does get roughed up pretty good. Um,
and there's a scene earlier. I can't remember if it was earlier or later, but when he's in a bar and Marsden's
Oh
character
yeah.
comes in with his two buddies and they, want to rough him up. That's played. It's a weird mixture of tense and funny and awkward because it's not like this classic rough and tumble bar fight. It feels like it's going to lead into that, but yeah, it's clumsy, and before you know it, it's all over with.
Hmm.
But yeah, this is where the writing, I think, really shines through because, like, okay, we want to see a bar fight where three guys approach our hero or our lead
Yeah.
and cause trouble. We've seen that 1,000 times before. How do we do something a little bit different? And so, yeah, Ray Elliott is like choreographing his own, imminent ass whooping. Like, well, move some chairs over there, and yeah, it's fun. I think that's what this movie. I need to see it again. I think because
Hmm.
the first time I'm kind of watching it mentally with my arms crossed. I'm like, "What is this? I've never
Sure.
heard of this. Oh, great! It's just loaded up with stars, probably to cover over the fact that it's not very good, but it's pretty good. So I think if I watch it again, I might have a greater appreciation for everything it has to offer.
It it is not using the term lightly when you say this is a charming film. It has a lot of charm, even though given the subject matter, it has a lot of charm. It moves. The thing it definitely just keeps moving. Really, I mean, it's like man. And then when you get into the heavies, the underground guys. I mean, I'll tell you what, this film hooked me quite a bit when you hear Sam Elliott's voice. You don't
Mm.
see him right away. You just hear him at the table talking about Ray. I'm like, oh, is that I'm like, oh, that's Sam Elliott. I'm like, okay, Henry Rollins working for Sam Elliott, who's a Mormon hitman. I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm like, I just, I like quirky films like this. I mean, they're not, as we said, it's following a formula, but it does it well, and it's charming enough to keep your interest of where it's going to go, and it doesn't get nearly as violent as it might be implied given some of the characters involved in it.
Is this an R-rated movie?
I think so.
Because I noticed like there's not any nudity. It's barely profane, and the violence is kept to a very bare minimum. So it almost feels like it's a PG-13 movie, but it might be R just because of like thematic elements or something. But yeah.
It is rated R, but I think you're onto it. I think it's rated R because of the theme, the subject, the underlying thing of him being, a company that coordinates people cheating. And there's some sex scenes, even though they're handled comedically in a montage or whatnot. I mean, Jerry O'Connell shows up briefly in it.
Yeah, when you look on IMDb, it's Jerry O'Connell. I'm like,
Oh,
what?
yeah, and the most you get is him in these real like Speedo underwear
The American flag on the dick. Yeah.
with the American flag on it. Which now, if you know Jerry O'Connell, you're like, oh, well, okay, I guess, you know. But yeah, I mean, Selma Blair is in here as the wife of Sam Elliott, one of the wives of Sam Elliott, and she just has the hots for Ray. And she was a surprise to show up because I went into this cold too. I mean, I had seen it, but I'm like, okay, I'm not looking at who's in it. And all of a sudden she shows up like, oh, and she's playing like this really kind of nympho type of wife who just wants to jump Ray Elliott's bones. And he's like, your husband is a hitman, and it's Sam Elliott. So that adds the extra layer of scary to an already idea of a hitman. The fact that it's just Sam Elliott, I'm like, and I loved how that was handled too.
Yeah, I mean, all the stuff with Sam Elliott is great. I love the fact that, there's this giant painting in his office of his whole family, and we see all three wives, but we
Yes.
only ever meet the one. So it's because you're kind of expecting like, oh, well, maybe the other two are going to show up at some point, but no, it's all Selma Blair all the time. But that's one of the strange things about watching this is it is a time capsule of 2006
Hmm.
as far as the actors that we see. But there's so many great faces in this movie, like Sam Elliott, like James Marsden, like his interrogation scene where he's just like he's brought in and he's losing it because he thinks the cops are gonna, figure out that he was at that motel when he shouldn't be, and he doesn't know this girl and all this other stuff. It's I don't know why he didn't, and maybe I haven't seen his full filmography, but I don't know why he didn't do like far more comedies. He's really great in this.
Oh yeah, he was hilarious, especially when he gets down and out, and the bed and breakfast guy is a witness, and he's coming to the hotel, and here James Marsden's character Wendell Hatch decides to go off him, and he's looking like down and out and everything. And I loved Marsden before. Everybody in here is having fun, and it's great to see the talent of, like you said, who's of 2006 in this film, which they're getting into this. This is just kind of a, as I said, charming small film. It got a limited release in theaters, so it was not many screens. It did get released to a festival. It got so it got out enough to probably get distribution for video at the time. But everybody's having fun. I loved seeing Henry Rollins show up. I mean, when he showed up, like, oh, I didn't realize, because again, I didn't look up the cast list, so I'm like, oh, that's cool. Henry Rollins is in this.
Here's the thing about Henry Rollins. I like Henry Rollins, not so much his music. I haven't listened that much, but his spoken word / stand-up comedy stuff is great. I don't necessarily like seeing him in movies because you can just tell that he's acting.
He's just Henry Rollins
really hard. Yeah. He's not even just Henry Rollins. He's got the look of Henry Rollins, but he's trying to, like, I'm watching his every move and just seeing how calculated it is. Like, it'd be really cool if I did an eyebrow raise here. Like, oh God. Speaking of which, side note for anyone who might want to go see Henry Rollins, bring a bucket, because I saw one of his stand-up live talking shows. He was up there for 4 hours.
Well, I mean, at least you got your money's worth.
No, I didn't, because I wanted to leave after 2. But it was a long time ago, so maybe things have changed.
Well, you want to stay through the whole thing on this film, because it's what I found interesting when we get into the, as I say, the Ocean 11 heist type moment, which is the third act, where Coogan's called, where Ray Elliott's called in some favors, and he's coordinating all of these, using his clients and waiving fees and such to use all these people who he's helped get alibis now are helping him bring all of these elements together. Rebecca Romaine's character almost feels like she's on her own side quest of sorts.
She definitely does. I mean, that's one of the funky things about this, and maybe I'll appreciate more on the rewatch, is because it almost feels like at the beginning of the movie that we're going to be following her story and the way she interacts with Ray Elliott's character, but she kind of disappears for a good portion of the movie. When she comes back towards the end is the setup for this hotel thing. Like, oh, that's right, I forgot she was in this movie. What's she been doing? But the other thing is, like, this, if you take out the end credits, this thing is like 83 minutes long.
It just keeps going. It just breezes through.
It breezes through, but there's so much packed into it that, I mean, all the baggage I have about, like, the whole Tarantino ending, that's my baggage. If you have no context for that, really, or have only seen like a couple of those movies, you can go into this thinking it's brilliant, and it does move. So yeah, I don't really have any complaints.
No, I didn't either. And I got worried a couple of times when I'm like, okay, so this is going to start taking more of a dark turn, especially when we get into Sam Elliott, who's the hitman, and we find out that he kind of has Ray Elliott by the balls, because Elliott's whole thing with his company of alibis is they don't do alibis of crimes. Is that they just do infidelity. That's all. They're just tied to doing infidelity and minor stuff, basically. Infidelity is not minor, but you know what I mean. It's not like they're covering up deaths or anything. But when he crosses paths with a hitman who realizes what his job is, he's like, "Oh, you're going to be doing this," and he's like, "You're a hitman, okay?" because you're
Yeah,
scary.
and it's that wonderful Sam Elliott kind of way where they're just like walking out on the patio by the pool and
Yeah.
got his arm around him, like, yeah, it's your new life. Yeah, it's great. I could watch like I can watch a series of this guy. By the time it was over, I liked that he had sort of turned a new leaf.
Mhm.
Spoiler alert. I like the way he flipped it around. He's like, they open the movie with statistics like 3 and 4, men cheat on their wives or something. And
Yeah.
at the end, he's like, but you know what that means? That means that 1 and 4 don't. So maybe there's some some hope or something like that. Uh, yeah, it's sweet,
Well, yeah,
unexpectedly so.
it is sweet with the ending, and it's one of those things where they don't sacrifice the Lola character. There's not something at all that they really sacrifice with the Lola character in order to bring this relationship together. And I liked that. Her character stayed consistent. They didn't make her suddenly become this swoony eye who's, gets caught up accidentally into, Ray Elliott's grand scheme. She's kind of got her own scheme going on, which ends up working with Ray's uh you know scheme. And I liked that they were equals throughout this film. You never felt like, that they really compromised either character for the romance part of it. um
Right. I mean, they fell in love.
yeah.
We talk about this because I understand where you're coming from, but like, give me some examples of movies where characters do sacrifice themselves for the overall love plot. Because I hear this all the time, especially when it comes to like the depiction of female characters. Like, oh, see, she never had to give up any of herself to fall in love. I'm like, where has that happened? It's a trope, but I feel like people are just
Right.
talking out of their ass half the time.
I sure, put me on the
It's oh,
spot. I'm trying.
I'm putting you on the spot.
You put me
I
on the
don't mean
spot.
to. I'm just
No,
this is
no, you're
mostly for folks out there watching this. Like, if you hear this argument come up,
no,
ask the person who's
it's
bringing it up to give an example or 6.
I I was just saying that. I didn't say that everybody gives it up, but, I'm just
No,
saying I
I'm
was
just
happy to.
it occurred to me because I hear
Yeah.
this a lot in conversation. I just didn't know if I'm missing something.
Well, I don't think in this type of film, you may see it as much as, let's just say, maybe a romantic comedy, as we were talking about romantic comedies,
No, but I
earlier,
mean,
but
even then, because that has classically been a female-centered or at least
right,
female-targeted genre, so it doesn't behoove the people making those to paint their female protagonists, love interests
sure.
as people who would just fold
Mhm.
and buckle it, and follow a man around. So again, I'm just like trying to find out like where are these movies with these like weak-willed women who
I
just like give in to the guy at the end?
I have to I'll have to think about there's some out there, but my brain right now, my addled brain can't pull them up. So, uh,
Let
to
me know because I want to
I
see
will
some
let
weak-willed women on film. No.
the opinions of Ian Simmons doesn't exactly reflect the opinions of spoiler room ladies, all our female listeners out there,
Or
um,
even his own. That's I'm a
or
walking
even
contradiction, Mark.
you know, John Leguizamo showed up in here. He's an actor who I think always gets overlooked because I think he really is. He's a solid actor, and in this one, while he does play it a little comedic, he puts in a solid performance as this guy who's just upset about his girlfriend. And while they play it a little bit for comedy because it is supposed to be a lighter film, I still enjoyed his character too. I'm like, he was entertaining.
Yeah, because you get because he was the boyfriend of the girl that ended up dead at James Marsden's character's hand. But you could tell there was genuine hurt there. It
Mhm.
was hurt and then also disgust because he finds out that his girlfriend's cheating on him, and then she finds out that she was cheating. I think he said, "Oh my God, not that guy."
Well,
And
because he was
so
his driver. He was his driver,
right,
so he's like, "Oh my god, him?"
right, but it wasn't even like the whole like, employee employer thing. It's just because the guy was a complete moron and a douchebag.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, there's that genuine hurt that came out there. And I loved at the end when he shows up at the hotel, he gets that call from Ray. And he's like, yeah, I can see Wendell. He's at the hotel. He's going in. Oh, wait, he's turning around. And Ray's like, you have to make sure he gets into that hotel. Whatever you got to do, just do it. So then John Leguizamo's character like walks across the street, goes up to the valet and says, hey, you, within earshot of Wendell, who sees him. He's like, oh, shit, I can't be seen by this guy. And so he turns and what does he do? Goes into the
Goes into the
hotel.
hotel. Yeah, I love that bit. I love that bit. He didn't even interact with him. He was talking to the valet. He just showed up as the valet.
Right, but he just made sure that he was seen, and he knew that that's all it would take. He didn't. There was no planning of like, "Hey, you should go and do this." It was all like quick thinking on his part, and it was to the benefit of the audience. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I did too. I liked it quite a bit. Marsden is just hilarious in this the whole way through as entitled yuppie. You know, well, not yuppie. I mean, we're talking the new millennium now, so I don't know if you could call him yuppie, but very entitled, young, spoiled son, and who's you obviously may have bought his way through school. He's not the brightest bulb on the
Oh,
tree.
oh yeah. I mean, like he's bringing in Ray Elliott to help him organize a getaway or come up with an alibi for a getaway on the verge of him getting married. I mean, he's
Right.
engaged, and he has this meeting at his house in like their backyard, which is like
Yeah.
also a golf course, I guess. And his wife is like 100 yards away. There's this great detail where they're walking away, and you know, Marsden's character is all like self-satisfied that he's going to get away with this, and Ray Elliott's like, never invite me, never call one of these meetings where your wife's around,
Yeah.
because like A, it's tacky, and B, you're gonna get caught, guaranteed. I'm like, it's great. I love it.
It is great. It's like you know what what he's doing, but they make it entertaining and they don't make it that heavy. I mean, when we first see him talking to Brolin's character and Brolin, his wife is going to show up and they've got it worked out. And this is where, Lola, Rebecca's character shows up too for the job. That whole sequence just played out great in the lobby and how Lola kind of backs Brolin's character into the corner going, oh, Fiji, you didn't want to tell her about Fiji. He's like, no, I did.
Because I'm like, where's this going? Oh, that's brilliant. I love that Sharon Lawrence played the wife.
Yeah.
Because I remember her from NYPD Blue back in like
Yep.
the
Yep.
late 90s. So it's just, yeah, again, it's just, I use the word time capsule. I mean, it's weird to think that this movie is now 18 years old. But it's full of people that, back in the day, you'd see them in everything.
And it surprises me looking at the release. I'm glad I looked up the release information with this cast, with the type of film it is. It actually is surprising that it got sent like only a limited release and then straight to video, because with the star power and that alone, and it couldn't have made cost that much to make. It's weird that it wasn't released wider in theaters. It just limited festival and then video. There you go.
I'm wondering because it reminded me of there's that movie Be Cool, which was the sequel to
Yeah.
Get Shorty.
Yeah.
A movie I couldn't stand. Like I almost walked out of Be Cool because I love
Did you
Get Shorty.
really?
Yes, I love Get Shorty. I love the novel. I'm a big Elmore Leonard fan. But I thought Be Cool. I don't remember if that was adapted from one of Elmore Leonard's books or if it was just a screenplay that was written as a sequel to Get Shorty, but I thought it was atrocious. That movie came out and didn't do very well.
Right.
Lies and Alibis came out the year after that. So I'm wondering if there was some calculation of like, this is the same kind of movie or it's adjacent to it's in that genre of something that already flopped and is also on the tail end of a trend that, I don't know if people are actually going to come out and see this. Because for as much star power is in this, it's a weird star power. It's not A list. It's not B list. It's like A- list, B+ list. Does that make sense? Yeah.
It kind of character actors, a number of them, to where they're people that you're right. most of the nearly all the staff, the crew, excuse me, the cast, most of the cast here are names that you were familiar, but you never exactly saw as the top of the marquee either. They were usually supporting. It's like
Yeah.
filled with a bunch of very talented supporting role actors who managed to get, a little bit more screen time in this film than they normally are used to getting. Um,
It's like third or fourth leads in some of the biggest movies of the time.
yeah,
I mean, you've got two people from X-Men. You've got well, Hellboy. Selma Blair was in Hellboy like 2 years
yeah.
before this, and Steve Coogan. I know he was big. I can't remember if this is like right before or right like in his wheelhouse, or is kind of like time to shine. But yeah, he did those Trip movies, I think, right around this time too.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, it's kind of unfortunate. I think like if you had like one ultra watt star in this, like, and Brad Pitt is also in it or something like that, then it might have had more of a chance.
Yeah, rather than Jerry O'Connell in the brief role, have Brad Pitt or you know, even
And they
Tom
could have
Cruise.
done right, and they could have done the same thing. It's like put his name front and center, like, oh shit, maybe he's coming back. Nope. And by that time the movie's over and you've paid your $10.
In true indie film fashion, you get the name on there, and the person shows up for one scene because they got him for a day. So, you know,
Or better yet, like you're filming at a convention and you see like Jeffrey Combs at his autograph table and like he's in the background, but you put him on the video box.
it well, I mean, even you had the film Lucky Number 11 came out at this time, which was another kind of multi-threaded. I mean, that was a little bit more, like you said, Tarantino-esque, but still it was one of those. Yeah, 2006. I don't understand how this didn't get a wider release, because maybe they needed Ed Norton in there. I could have seen Ed Norton. If they would have put Ed Norton in there, maybe that would have pulled him in.
Ed Norton should have been one of the two interrogating cops. That would have
Yes.
been perfect
Oh,
for
that
him.
would have been perfect. That would have been perfect. Yeah. I mean, overall for comedies out during that time, yeah, there were a lot of interesting films put out in 2006. I'm just briefly looking through this list here going, "Oh my god." And then I'm also feeling very old because I'm like, "Oh my god, it came out then?"
Like help me out. What are some of the things you're
Oh,
flashing back to?
Mission Impossible 3, Clerks 2,
Oh yeah.
Talladega Nights, Beer Fest, Pan's Labyrinth,
I
The
have the I
Last
have the
Ki
I have the Clerks 2 screenplay right on my desk, Mark.
there you go. See, that was the year of the two magician battling films. You had The Prestige and The Illusionist
With
out
Ed
at that
Norton.
time with Ed Norton. Yeah, Saw 3 was only at 3 at that time. Borat was out.
Oh,
Like I said, Lucky Number 11, Da Vinci Code, Pursuit of Happiness, Casino Royale, Little Miss Sunshine, and Departed. And that's just in the top 50
oh,
there, right? Right? What a
what
year.
we don't have movie years like that anymore.
No, you don't. I mean, even animated Monster House came out that year.
Yeah.
Dead Man's Chest came out that year. Black Dahlia, V for Vendetta. That year, holy crap! Just going through it, Man of the Year with Robin Williams. You had Devil Wears Prada. Uh,
Ooh.
yeah, I mean, 2006, man.
Here's a question, Mark.
Hmm.
Have you ever seen Devil Wears Prada?
I have not actually.
Watch The Devil Wears Prada. Yes, it's a chick flick.
Yes.
It's rom-com adjacent, but from what I remember of it, it's more of a workplace comedy
Sure,
thing.
sure.
But I mean, it's the movie that gave us Emily Blunt.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
I
and for a reason. It's not just because she was like 22 and smoking hot or whatever. She's like really good in that movie. And young Anne Hathaway and Meryl Streep is
Meryl
great
Streep, yeah.
as the wicked boss. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, check it out.
Wow, Rocky Balboa was in 2006
Oh
too.
yeah. That was a great
And
sequel.
yeah, that was out there. So yeah, I mean the year was packed, and maybe that's why they didn't release it. But I would
Yeah,
have,
I can't say that I would say, "Oh yeah, this movie belongs in the same like released in theaters rankings as any of those movies."
yeah. Well, I mean, the comedies they had out at that time, though, most of a lot of them were going right to video at that point. You know, where you didn't get as many comedies in the. I mean, unless it was Adam Sandler, you got Click. Uh, but you did get as many comedies in this. You know, those started going right to direct to theater. You did have RV. You know, you had John Tucker Must Die.
Well,
But then you also had the National Lampoon movie with Paris Hilton. Um,
wait, was that the Hottie and the Naughty?
no, that wasn't. No, that was National Lampoon's Pledge. This I think may have had her in it. I'm not sure. Looks like the cover. I don't know. I'm not giving it that much thought. But no, a lot of these comedies like went right to video, you know, so maybe that was it, is that there wasn't a huge market for comedies. Yeah, you had Clerks too, but that was writing off of Clerks and Beer Fest that had a few names in it, but a lot
And
of the
those weren't big hits either. I
no.
mean, I think the biggest comedy that year was Borat, as you had mentioned,
Yeah,
and that's in a category all its own.
that, that is a different category altogether, to which when you see the films like that, and I've had I know we've had conversations, and I know you enjoy the Jackass films quite a bit. But for me, I guess I don't like either prank films or stuff like that for innocent. Now, Jackass not so much, but the Borat ones were prank films, and there were a few of those scenes in Borat to where I was just like, where they weren't, you know, they weren't in on the joke. They thought he was a real person, and that was part of the comedy. And that, for me, I feel bad for the people who aren't in on the joke, because, you know, I don't, I
Well,
guess that's not my type of humor.
Well, I mean, but this goes back to the Patreon conversation we're having about reality television. None
Yes,
of it's
that's
real. I
true.
mean,
Yeah.
it may be that the people were not in on the joke initially, and so you're getting those very real reactions with Borat. I know famously, like he talked to like Donald Trump and a whole bunch of people, like when he was doing his Ali G show back on
Yeah.
HBO.
Yep. Mhm.
Um, but the everyday people that he would talk to. I think he like went to the rodeo as Borat and did all this
Yeah.
stuff. And there were people like screaming and booing and stuff. They all had to sign releases. If they didn't sign those releases for being the victim of his prank, and the studio saying, "Hey, we'll compensate you to be in this giant Paramount release or whatever it is," then all of a sudden that I I get it. If it's just like you see that more on YouTube now, where
Right.
some
Yeah.
jackass will go to the mall. There was a big story a couple months ago about some YouTuber went to the mall with his, giant security guard, and he would just like film himself messing with people
Yeah.
and like getting up in their faces and intimidating them and stuff, and then like run away laughing and stuff. That's not cool because that's
No.
just some idiot with a camera doing it for clicks. Whereas these movies and TV shows, they got to get people have
They
to
do have
sign
to
off
get
on that.
realized. Yeah. They get
Or
you,
or that's why you see people with like blurry faces and stuff like in the
right.
back. Like, I don't want any part of this. It's
Or
stupid.
they do it after the fact. They're the joke, and then they're just like, oh no, this is just a joke. Here's a release form. We're gonna pay you money for being in this movie, you know.
Right.
So the initial reactions are real, but you know, so maybe that's why Lies and Alibis just went direct to video, was there wasn't a huge market for comedies. I mean, these things, we've seen them, other trends in you know, Hollywood to this day. People talk about, you know, either uh, IP fatigue, not just comic book fatigue, but IP fatigue, to where you're just seeing sequels to things of legacy stuff, because that's what made money a few years ago, and they're still riding that train or trying to, for that trend. We've got all the comic book movies because Marvel took off. You know, it's Hollywood always does that. The minute you start seeing a trend, or and that's just what we see on the public side, you know. The private side, some of these films that they know are going to get greenlit, studios find out another studio is making this type of film, and it's got these big stars, like, oh, we better make something similar to that, so that we and maybe that's it. But I could have seen this as a spring release, before your summer films hit in 2006, maybe a light spring release, not January or February, but maybe a March release or something that was light and breezy that you could watch, because it's got talent. The writing is decent, and it's fun. It's charming. This film doesn't ever get that heavy in it. It keeps everything at like this mid-tone, and I liked that. That's kind of refreshing.
Yeah, that is one of the, I guess one criticism I have is there's a scene towards the very end where Ray Elliott gets shot multiple times in the chest.
Yeah.
He doesn't, of course. It's a cadaver that his friend who works in the morgue helped him set up, and it was all like a ruse. But it's one of those things where he knew that he was working with the hitman guy, and they were setting this whole thing up as a ruse. But the filmmaker is directed by two people, neither of which was Noah Hawley, were trying to trick us into thinking
the audience
this guy was in danger, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's so out of place, because when he gets shot in the chest, you get the feeling like, oh, this is where we're really gonna get him. It's like the big, like the Janet Leigh surprise in Psycho, like, oh my god, our main character's dead. What's going on? And I immediately went into, what are they trying to pull? So I was like yanked right out of it, because it doesn't make sense to kill the main character that late in the film unless it is that kind of a movie. Right. And also it changes tonally with everything else. Like Rebecca Romaine realizing that something's wrong, going back through the revolving doors, running slow motion through the cops and screaming and being dragged out by the cops. And you're like, something's up here. I don't like it. But it's only like a minute of screen time, so I can forgive it. But while I'm watching it, yanked right out of the picture.
It does stumble there in that it's trying to pull the wool over the eyes of the audience as well. And in tone, you're right. It's a 180 tone shift because of the way it's shot, the way even the music is handled, he's in a darkly lit room. There's a very scary hitman type person, and he looks kind of sad, like, oh, this is like the inevitable type of thing, like it caught up to him. Because spoiler, because this is the spoiler room, folks, so if you don't want to hear the big twist, which isn't really a big twist, which I kind of liked, but this name drop that they kept dropping about his partner, guess what? His partner is him. What? Yeah, I kind of suspected about 2/3 of the way through, the way they brought his partner up too much. I'm like, I bet you it's him. And it wasn't a disappointing reveal. When they reveal that, I was like, okay, good. Yeah, I was following the clues that you're giving me that this was him. For a little while I thought it was his separate, but the fact that they bring up his ex-partner's names a number of times, and it just keeps coming up. You're like, oh, I bet it's him. I bet,
And that's, The Usual Suspects was 11 years before this, and it won the Oscar. So this is like, it's like a comedic Kaiser Soze.
It is. It's comedic Kaiser Soze, but it's great because at the end he realizes their business, and he and Lola go off and decide to live their life however they want to, because they've kind of found their equal. And I like that. I like the charming ending. I liked how everything came to be. It was great. This is hilarious, folks. The way they set this up is Sam Elliott's hitman, the Mormon, he is very possessive of his wife, and so he thinks his wife is going off to cheat on him. So they basically manipulate it, so he ends up going to the room where he thinks his wife is, and that's where all the cops are, who have been following Ray Elliott, who are just one step behind the whole time. And it's just this wonderful scene to where he's going to put a hit on the detective, and he chokes her in the hallway, and I loved the look she gave when she started scanning the card for the room, as he's saying, get in the room, because he's going to offer the room. And I'm like, wait, aren't the cops still in? And sure enough, the door opens, all the cops are there.
And I guess that's the difference between this and a Tarantino movie, because like the second he opened that door, that he
You
would
would
have
have been
been like
shot.
aired
Yeah.
out, right?
Y-
And I did like the, they play a lot with the layout of the hotel,
Yeah.
and seeing constantly where like, oh, these people are exactly 2 floors above where this scene is taking place, and they do these nice little bends around the room where you're going up above everybody and then up through the floor.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very, yeah, I'm not going to say creative because I've seen it before, but I always appreciate when they, play with the space like that and really give us a sense of where everyone is at, especially when dealing with a dozen characters in a giant hotel. It's very helpful.
And I think you make a good point in that, as criticism, critics, we've all run into it or whatnot. It's one of those things where you see a film and you're like, well, you've seen this before. That doesn't It's not always a negative thing if it's done well. The reason you're seeing it is because it's a tool that has worked all these years. And
Hmm.
as long as it's executed well, yeah, it might not necessarily be original, but that doesn't mean it's not any less entertaining if it's handled well. I mean, we brought up the Ocean's 11 films. They followed a formula for a heist movie that's been around since the original Ocean's 11 movie. And it doesn't mean it's a bad thing as long as it's entertaining. And I find the Alibi, aka Lies and Alibis, entertaining. I found it a nice, refreshing, entertaining film. It's not cynical. It doesn't allow itself to get too dark. I mean, even though you have the deaths and that, even those are kind of handled in a comedic way. It's just it is, like I said, charming film that, if you're looking for something light and breezy, just kinda, "Oh, cool." That's what this film is. You know? It's
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it isn't cynical. It starts off cynical because I
Right.
think the characters start off cynical, and by the end, you've got this full progression of the character arc, and it doesn't feel forced because the type of movie this is, it could very easily have been, well, he's a bastard in the beginning, he's a bastard in the end, but the
Right.
women just love him because he's charming. No, Ray Elliott changes throughout the course of the film, and Lola, I don't think we spent enough time with her to see
Right.
how she's changed or whatever. She softens a bit because you get this feeling of a bit more harder edges, because that's nice. In the inner job interview scene towards the beginning,
Yeah.
she's talking about like, I don't, I work with people, I don't work for people, and I certainly
Yep.
don't work under people. I thought
Yeah.
that was really fun.
Yeah,
But
that
it was cool because like the visual language at the end when they're getting together, she's a good foot taller than
she
than
is.
the,
She is.
which is like the opposite, like stereotypes in movies. It is the guy who's like towering over the woman, and this they flip the script on it. It's fun to see. I don't know that it quote unquote means anything, but it's just so weird.
Well, and
See.
then you'll even get the line because, Ray Elliott realizes when he goes in and kisses her, for that romantic shot at the end, he's like, "Oh, I realize you're much taller than I am."
That felt almost like an improv.
I'm almost wondering if it was an improv line, and maybe we didn't get a lot of Rebecca because they only had her for a certain amount of time because you had X-Men: The Last Stand come out this same year,
Oh, right.
so she may have been, schedule wise, may have been tough to have her in the movie more.
And yeah,
Uh,
I'm kind of fine with that because she does disappear, and I don't know if it's sloppiness, necessity, or runtime, or maybe a little bit of all three. But when she comes back into the picture, it is a bit jarring because she's been away
mhm.
for so long. But it's refreshing. It's like, oh yeah, I like Lola. Let's see what she's up to. And despite not having time to like fully develop her character or whatever, I didn't feel like the movie cheated to get
Mm,
her and Ray Elliott together. I felt it worked. We have just enough information about her at the beginning and how she's involved in this plot and her spending just enough time with Ray Elliott to see that she's kind
Mhm.
of interested in him because he's kind of quirky and charming
It
and weird.
what's even more interesting, given the subject matter, given this film, the what is assumed an intimate moment between Ray Elliott and Lola, we never actually see on screen. He comes by her place the second time he's beat up from Ray, Leguizamo beating him up, his buddies, and he comes by and she's taking care of him. She's stitching him up a bit, and she gets this kind of look, and they're having this rather close conversation. And then you fade to black, and you go to next morning. It's like the classic, like old school, like did they or did they? But they seem a bit closer now. But you don't get a scene of them in the bed. You don't get a scene of him leaving her apartment or everything. The next scene we see is him on the job trying to figure out how he's going to get out of this mess with the Mormon. Uh,
Right, and that's you're absolutely right. There's not like he wakes up and you hear sizzling bacon or something, and she's in a skimpy nightie, like how do you like your eggs? Do you even like eggs? It's just business as usual. They might not have done anything. They might have
right.
she
Yeah.
might have just like stitched him up and put him to bed because he'd been through a hell of a night. But it does show a tenderness between these two characters that they start off as strangers, then they become coworkers, and then friends, and then you see that all in the course of 85 minutes.
I know,
Again,
right?
25 at least of which she's not even in the damn movie, and you get all of this still. It's very tight.
It is. It's tight. And that's what also I adored about it was the fact that I'm like, this. How can you not make this type of film now that off? It's like you've told a complete story. You've given us complete characters, at least enough for all of us to put together exactly what type of people these are in the situations, all within a span of less than 90 minutes. Yeah. It's
Yeah, it's embarrassing. Like it's another okay, we've been talking about, pre-code movies and everything.
yeah.
Uh Late last week I talked about Dante's Inferno from 1924, a
Oh yeah.
silent
Mhm.
movie, black and white and sometimes red. And I'm watching that. I'm looking at the special effects. It's all like matte paintings and
Mhm.
very, this is the developing the language of cinema right before my eyes. And I'm thinking this is more believable and nightmarish than any Guillermo del Toro, like scary visions using CGI and stuff. I mean, I love Del Toro, but just that kind of thing, like, oh, we're gonna create a hellscape and digital monsters and stuff. Like, no, go back 100 years and you'll see how it's done.
So you're saying that was scarier than the film coming up, Imaginary, which if you watch the whole trailer, you pretty much see the entire film. So,
Imaginary? I don't know
oh
if I
yeah,
know
have
this
you not
one.
have you not seen the trailer for it? No,
I've seen the
it's
trailer for If, which stands for Imaginary Friend. I take it they're
right.
two different movies.
Yeah, well, if is animated and live action mixed together for well, every film nowadays is like that, but no, if is more of a bit of more of the comic thing to where you can see one person can see everyone's imaginary friend. So
Mhm.
Bloomhouse, I think it's Bloomhouse playing off of this, knowing this is coming, I think, come up with a film called Imaginary, which is a horror movie about an imaginary friend. A woman, if you watch the trailer, it pretty much, and you're a horror fan, you've pretty much seen the entire movie. You can put together, unfortunately, what happens in it because it's like almost a 2.5 minute, 3 minute trailer, and you're watching this going, quit showing me. No, stop now. Stop now. Stop. Okay. I've seen the movie now. But it's about a woman who moves back to her childhood home, and her daughter finds her old bear, which was connected to her old imaginary friend. And then you find out imaginary friends are real, but in this world, imaginary friends that can be demons, and they're trying to get to the real. It's
Was the bear's name Babadook?
no, it's not.
Um,
No, it's not named Babadook, but they could probably do a crossover at some point with it and Babadook. But it's called Imaginary, I believe that's the title, and it's about basically a possessed, a bear, a demon that's attached to the bear that's an imaginary friend. And if you watch the trailer, it's just like, oh man. But
I did see I know it's off topic, but I did see a trailer for a movie, the Tarot. Have you seen the like the
I
tarot
just
cards?
saw a trailer for that Tarot. Yeah.
That looks all right. I don't know. I like the design of the, like, whatever these monsters are. They look kind of fun. I don't know
It
if the movie's gonna be any good, but I watched them like, oh, this is a horror movie trailer that I don't despise. Fun.
No, no, I didn't either. It looks like a spiritual successor to like 13 Ghosts, in all honesty, in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
It really does. I'm curious about that film. It kind of came out of nowhere and I saw the trailer and I'm like, oh, okay, you have my attention. I'm like that. I'm all up for creepy creatures. I'm all up for
Yeah.
give me, and Imaginary's got creepy creatures in it. So I'm like, okay, I'll go see it, of course, because I'm a horror fan, and we'll go see anything horror in the theaters, regardless of, even if it is The Nun that puts you to sleep, literally. Um, True story, folks. Only movie to ever actually make me nod off was the first Nun movie. So nothing happened for most of the film. Nothing happened.
You took a vow of silence and then you started
Mm.
snoring.
I mean, at least The Conjuring, The Red Door, at least had spooky things coming out of like paintings and shit. Even though no one died in that, it was a horror movie with no body count. Which please stop this trend. It's a horror movie. It needs body count, and now I have the cops and put on an FBI list as we know it. As I talked about. Things needing a body count. And we're going to end it there. Lies and Alibis, folks. A fun movie. Your final thought. Would you recommend it to someone to watch?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can find it on Tubi. You got to watch a couple of commercials, but you
Yeah.
can watch it for free, and you can like rent it from other places. But yeah, if you're tired of modern crap, this is a nice change of pace. And if you dug movies of the early to mid 2000s, this is it's a nice little bit of comfort food, I think.
You're exactly right. It's a comfort food movie. You could pop this in. This is a good date night movie almost for you. It's got a variety here, and I think there's something for a lot of people to enjoy. And this is just, yeah, this could be a date night movie. So there you have it, folks. This date night is coming to an end. Thank you.
Don't try and kiss me.
I won't. Well, I can't I just get my camera all sloppy. But anyway, we don't want a sloppy camera. That's a whole nother movie. But thank
This
you.
isn't OnlyFans, Mark. It's
Sorry, I'll save that for later. I'll save that for later. But thank you to our folks who tuned in tonight to watch our live stream. Thank you to all of you. And as always, this is the point in our film where I give my guest the license to shill. So, Ian, floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mark. I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. You can also find me on YouTube right here. Just look up Kicking the Seat and you'll find me. I'm also here on Monday nights talking movies with Mark. And I mentioned that new episode of Dante's Inferno. The review is up on my channel, and I did reference our discussion of Charlie Chan from Dark Alibi from a few weeks ago. So yeah, it's all good stuff. Like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And I've got more things coming up, although I don't know what they are beyond talking Dune 2 in a couple of weeks, probably.
I gotta watch Dune again. David Lynch, so I'm looking forward to part 2 because I wanted to see where they go with the David Lynch movie after that part 1. Or is this Dune 2 not? This is not a sequel to that.
You're gonna be, wait.
And
why did Kyle MacLachlan turn into a 12-year-old boy? I know Timothy Chalamet is older than that, but you'll never convince me otherwise.
Well, thank you, folks. Yes, check out Ian Simmons' stuff and check out my stuff if you're interested at all at specialmarkproductions.com. I didn't get a chance to update it yesterday, but I have a blog out there in case you missed it, to where you can catch all the stuff that we've posted the previous week if you haven't been following our socials. And please, yes, make sure you subscribe here on the YouTube, on the podcast channel. It helps us out quite a bit with them fun algorithms and such. So next month is going to be Ms. March. Yes, folks, but not the Ms. March you think. No, we're looking at films with single letter titles. We'll be looking at the remake of M. We'll be looking at the original M for our pre-code film. We'll be looking at a Bollywood action romance film, I believe, called I, and then a political thriller from France called Z. So it should be interesting. Not all of them are black, not all of them are going to be black and white. So there you go.
I don't even know what world we're living in anymore, Mark.
What world are we living in? But until then, folks, we'll just say a good night, everyone.
Good night.